Today is all about getting you into the right mental state before it's showtime. Hi everyone, Enzo here. Welcome to another edition of the Race Driver Coach Show, straight at a weekend which is amazing for sport, especially motorsport. We've got F1, which is actually on at the minute. Everybody's crashing into each other at the start of the Paul Ricard Grand Prix. We've got DTM, we've got British Touring Cars, IndyCar, I think NASCAR's out maybe. World Touring Cars, the karters. I think we've got like 10 drivers out this weekend, which is really busy and it's nice. They're all doing well in their own way. Even if they're not doing well, they're still doing well because they're growing. So everything's fine, and I'm at home, which is really strange. If you've got drivers out, why are you at home? I'm at home because I've just landed, or yesterday landed from Florida, a business/pleasure trip, and now I'm doing this for you. I'm coming here. It's Sunday. I'm talking to you, delivering the best information I can to help you become the best driver you can. And as I said, today is about creating the mental state you need in order for you to be at your best. Quite simply, that's one of the main areas I want you to focus on. Because your driving standard, your driving level, your skill set is whatever it is. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be medium. But what you do need to do is access your very best when it matters. You need to perform on demand. You need to make sure when you're in that race, you're at your best level, no matter what that level is. But all too often, we allow our minds to distract us. We allow our minds to send us down a route which doesn't allow us to access our resources, access our skill when needed. And this is a very vital area. I spend most of my time coaching in this area. And today's question that sets up all this video is this. It's from Seb. I want to come up with a pre-race routine that gets me ready to race. I've never found one that fits. What do you do with your drivers, and can you suggest something for me to do? Thanks, Seb. Once again, a tremendous question that is pretty much going to be on the minds of everybody, no matter what level they're at, no matter what they're doing in life. If they have to perform, if they have to go into an arena where they have to be at their best, then guess what? They better be turned on up here. They better have the mindset needed in order for them to be able to flow. In order for them to just get all the performance blockers out the way, which is always up here, isn't it? Unless you've got an injury. But your performance blocker is usually mental. It's usually above your ears, right here. So if you can master that, if you can, or at least manage that. I don't want to say master because people get very sensitive when you say master the mind. But if you can manage your emotions and your focus at the particular point when you need to be switched on, then your results will improve. You will improve quicker and you'll feel better. You'll be happier doing what you're doing. Unless you're completely rubbish and you haven't got the skill to win, but then you know what to work on. At least you know you've got to be at your best if you're going to go in there and win and do your best, right? And it all starts with the mind. And to be honest, it starts before the race has even started, before the qualifying's even started. If you're the kind of driver that's crumbling under pressure, if you want to call it pressure, even though pressure is a complete privilege, if you're the driver at the minute that when it comes to crunch time, show time, you can't hack it. When you get into the lead, you start to look at the mirrors and tense up. When you know it's quali and the tyres are in now, you start to get flustered and overdrive and make mistakes. Then all of this is down to your mental, your mindset, your mood, your emotions that you are creating, by the way, which I'll tell you about in a bit. That you're creating that are causing this situation, because we've all had times when we can seem to do no wrong. We're in a great mental state, we're flowing, we're allowed to express ourselves and be out there, a bit like what I'm doing now on this video, to be at my best. Give you an example, to be at my best when I'm doing this podcast or this video, whatever way you're consuming this, I've got to flow. If I've got something on my mind, it's going to be obvious. If I'm not that confident and I've got to deliver to something to you in the right way, so it does grab you by the scruff of the neck and allows you to learn off it, If I'm a bit nervous or unsure of what I'm saying, you'll see it. You'll see it and you'll go, Enz, I don't quite believe what you're saying. I don't believe because you don't believe. And I only say stuff I believe on here, so I've got to pretty much do what you've got to do. I've got to make sure I'm in the right mental state that allows me to contribute to you 100%, to give you full honesty, to give you full openness. I've got to feel it. If I don't feel it, I don't even switch on the video. I don't even switch on the microphone. I'm like, today is not a good day because we've got too much to do in doing this. I don't want to rush it. I just want to give them best value. So I've got to make sure I'm in the right mental state. I'll do a warm-up routine. I'll go for a jog, get myself there, listen to music, focus on things that is around this subject in terms of mentally or what I think about, maybe what I've watched in that day. And then I'm ready. I'm ready to just switch it all on and say, hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Race Driver Coach Show. And away we go. No different to you. No different to you when you get into that car, going into that meeting to sell somebody. So, there's three things I want you to really understand, and I've already explained one of them, but the first thing to understand is the importance of mental state. And I've already told you this just now. It's really important. It's paramount. You've got to be in the right mental mode if you're to make the right decisions when you're in the car, and then that gives you the right results. It gets you at your best, all right? So mental state first, allows you to see the world a certain way. You make a decision because of the mood you're in, and then that is an action and gets you a result. So we've got to make sure the first step, the mental, is there. It's really important. Okay, second thing to understand is you can control your emotions, or at least manage them. You can manage your mental state. You can go from depressed to happy in the blink of an eye. If something's going to happen and you're feeling fearful for it, but then you realize it isn't, it's gone the opposite way, all of a sudden you're happy or you're relaxed. You can. You've done this over and over and over again, but it's doing it on demand now. That's what I want you to understand, is you can do this. You've got, like I've said before, you've got a certain recipe to create a certain emotion, and you got that down. Every time you want to feel sorry for yourself, you can start to do spinning the old record of, what shall I focus on? I'll focus on what's not right. I'll focus on why me. I'll focus on the things that make me feel bad. My body will follow. I'll start to do this. Bang, you're there. You've created it. And if you want to do the opposite, you start to focus on get grateful for stuff. You start to focus on stuff that is good, things that have happened that are great, how lucky you are. And your body starts to echo that as well. And that emotion's triggered. You do this all the time. You watch a movie, it puts you in a state, you come out the movie, you're in a different state, 5 minutes later you're in a different one again. You're always going through different emotions. You have a set of emotions that usually you live with, like 4 or 5, that they're the constant ones that you seem to swim in. We all do it, by the way. Some people have depression, all the dark emotions, a bit of happiness now and then if they have a drink or they lose it through drugs or whatever, but then they go back into that again and they just seem to do the same crazy 8 all the time. But there's no reason why you can't stop that crazy 8 and say all of a sudden, I'm going to be in charge of what mental state I need to be in, and I'm going to be in charge of creating it when I need to. That's what we're talking about now. Now, the third thing to understand is that most drivers are not doing this. Fascinating, right? Most drivers out there that you've raced against and seen and admire and all this, they're not really in control of their emotions a lot of the time. Some days they're good, some days they're bad. It's hit and miss. Some days they overdrive, some days they underdrive. Some days they're nervous, others they're angry, and they're just not in control, which is brilliant for you because that means this is an opportunity. If you jump on this and say, right, my baseline normal from now on is going to be, or for this coming week, I'm going to start to control my emotions. If I don't feel motivated to work hard on my craft today, that's brilliant. This is a moment for me to learn. How can I be motivated if I wanted to? And then you create a warm-up. This is pretty much like before you go into a car, of how you can create this thing called motivation, inspiration, determination to execute on what you need to do. And you get good then. You say, right, I did it today. I woke up really feeling down, not really, just no energy. But then after 10 minutes, I managed to get myself into a motivated state and I've just had the best work day I've ever had. I feel like I've moved forward on my driving, my fitness, my simulator work, my sponsorship work, whatever it is. I'm so happy that I took control. And your brain will start to like it. Your brain will start to say, okay, you took control there. That's showing me that I can trust you. You are the one in control. You can manage your emotions when you need to. And it's these kind of things that you do in daily life that will help you in your race car. Help you in anything, actually. You can take yourself from one emotional state to another. You've done it all your life. You just need to do it on demand. But most drivers are not doing it at the minute. So you can really capitalize on this and always be at the best, whatever level that is you're at right now. You're racing, you're driving, your skill set, whatever that is, you want to access it in the race, in qualifying, when it needs to be there. In order to do that, you've got to be in the right mindset. Okay, so what do I do, you asked? Well, I've got these things. I've got the reaction ball. This is quite a big one. If you're listening on the podcast, it's a big red ball in my hand right now. And it's got balls all over it. And this, when I throw this to the driver, bouncing on the floor, it can go in any direction. It can go left, right, up, down, kind of down. It can bounce high, bounce low. You never know. So it wakes the driver up in terms of their body. It activates their body and, you know, the reactions, and it speeds up the brain. Because if the driver's driving at 4 in the afternoon and they've had all day off, they need to get themselves back sharp. So this kind of thing's good. And the tennis ball, we start with this actually because it's a bit easier. Going straight to the reaction ball can make the driver tweak a muscle. So with the tennis ball, we start with ups, I call it, where I hit it up like this at the driver, up, and they hit it up back, and we're just keeping it off the ground. Then it goes to a bit of a tennis thing, then the reaction ball. Very simple, not to get too much of a heart rate or a sweat on, just to make them feel loose and reaction and woken themselves up. Got a bit of oxygen in there as well for the breathing, and that's another thing I do. After this, make the driver breathe. Big deep breaths in, like the Wim Hof breathing exercise, which I've spoke to you about before, but if you're listening to this, quickly research Wim Hof breathing exercise, and all it is you're breathing all the way in and letting it out for about 30 seconds. And you do that, and it makes you yawn, it makes you tingle a bit, because you're getting all that oxygen into the cells. And if it's a fresh place like a Red Bull Ring with all the mountains around, it's amazing. It's a proper brain waker. So you've done a little bit of exercise and you're waking the brain up. Right, that's bog standard stuff. As you go around the paddock, you can see drivers doing this kind of stuff all the time, right? They're skipping, they're juggling, and they're all about activating themselves and giving them a bit of a reaction test against the side of a truck with someone else, their coach, their fitness trainer, their dad, their mum, whoever it is, sister, brother, cousin, uncle, auntie, whoever's there. And they're warming themselves up. The problem is they go from that, and maybe they listen to a bit of music to get them in a mood. They go straight into the car and they expect to be there. They be at their best. But quite often they're not. That's because they haven't followed a 3-step strategy, which is what I want to share with you now. There's more of this, by the way, but if I just give you 3 steps, I think it's kind of easy for you to fill in the blanks, because everyone's different. Everyone has their own process. So this is it. First off, number 1, foundation. Now, foundation means let's just lay the foundations before we go into this race or this quali session. Let's get things all clear in our head about what needs to be done. So you're setting yourself up way before you're doing anything with one of these balls, anything with a stretch band or breathing. This is now, I've got to get mentally clear on what needs to be done in this next session or this race. So you go through your engineer, you get all the feedback, you get about 1,000 things that you've got to change about your driving, braking shapes, throttle here, crossover on the both, steering less, line, gears, when to shift because you keep hitting the bloody rev limiter. You've got all these things, right, to correct. Like 1 or 2 per corner. Even if you're at P1, you've still got things you've got to correct. And it can be a bit confusing when you've got all these corrections to make and you're just about to go into qualifying. It's not the way to be. Because as soon as you start to drive too consciously, and you're thinking about process too much about, oh, now I've got to apply this, I've got to do a more initial hit, I've got to bleed the brake, my minimum's coming too early. That's not the way to drive quickly. You will never get to P1 if you're driving too consciously like that. You need to allow it to flow. You need to allow your subconscious to drive and figure it out and know. So to help you do this, once you've done this is still foundation, remember, step 1. Once you've done your debrief with the engineer or somebody who's giving you feedback about the driving, I want you to really simplify it down. You know what you're to do already because they've told you to death. You've written it down. That's stored. That's in there. But I don't want you to focus on all these areas. I want you to focus on just 1 or 2 things you need to do process-wise, not the end goal like P1. I want to be P1. This is a goal of what you've got to do in in order to get closer to P1 or to get that P1. The process. So, for example, say if you're starting a race, instead of thinking, you're on the front row. You're on the front row, you're first or second, and sometimes drivers think, right, starting procedure, I've got to do this with the clutch, I've got to preload it, then I've got to make sure that I don't go on the dirty patch there, I've got to make sure I shift at the right time because I keep messing that up, not to look in my mirror too much, and this is all before they're even in fourth gear. They've got all this going through their head, right? Obviously the burnout's going up to the grid as well to warm the tyres up. It's just a lot to think about. And as soon as one of them things doesn't go correct, doesn't go right, you freak out. Say if you didn't preload or you think it's creeping, all of a sudden you're anxious. And then you're going to probably screw up the next thing that you've got to do. So let's just do it this way. If that was the scenario and the driver had to do all these corrections, you make a goal, and I've said this myself to drivers, just win the first corner. Win the first corner and head down, looking at the next. And that's it, done. Easy as that. So even though they've got all these processes to do, to improve on, just tell them to get into that first corner, win it in terms of the car that's next to you, and focus on the next corner. Done. Head down. Go. No looking in the mirrors. Just go. And it's simple. The brain then starts to work out, okay, if that's all I've got to do, I can do that. That's easy. I know what to focus on. So if they do slightly mess up the start now, it's not game over yet because they're still looking for the corner. There's still a chance I can win that corner. I can brake a bit later. I can defend a bit harder, but they stay resourceful. So I put their head in the future a little bit to the first corner, even though they're not there yet, and I made it simple. And the brain works all the rest out. It has echoes of what they need to do to the clutch. They know that already. You don't need to tell them again. So in other words, for foundation, you're told a lot of things. I want you to simplify it. So when you're going into that session, you've simplified it with a very simple goal of what needs to be done, what you've got to execute on, all right? Then, as part of this, if I've got to do that for that corner, what's the kind of mindset I need? And you'll think, I need confidence. I need self-belief. That's going to be your warm-up routine, your pre-race routine. If you want to, we'll play with the ball then, fine. That's just getting you physically there and your mind waking up a bit. But now we need to focus the mind on what it needs. Now we've given it energy, we need to focus it on that goal and on the person you need to be in order to do that. So then we start to make the body echo confidence and self-belief. We'll start to talk about things that have happened in the past that have been really good. We start to be grateful. So we're creating that emotional state, all right? That's what we do for the driver. So they're walking towards the car, and as they walk closer to that car, as they walk closer, they get more and more confident. Just like what Mike Tyson said.
While I'm in the dressing room, 5 minutes before I come out, my gloves are laced up. I'm breaking my gloves down. I'm pushing the lever in the back of my glove. I'm breaking the middle of the glove so my knuckle could pierce through the leather. I feel my knuckle piercing against the tight leather gloves on the Everlast boxing glove. When I come out, I have supreme confidence, but I'm scared to death. I'm totally afraid. I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid of losing. I'm afraid of being humiliated, but I'm totally confident. The closer I get to the ring, the more confidence I get. The closer, more confidence I get. The closer, more confidence I get. All during my training, I've been afraid of this man. I thought this man might be capable of beating me. I've dreamed of him beating me, but I always stayed afraid of him. But the closer I get to the ring, I'm more confident. Once I'm in the ring, I'm a god. No one could beat me.
And that leads us to number 2, which is initiation. We need to initiate this. So you're walking up to that car and you're getting more and more confident. You're saying the things that you needed to do. Like I've just explained, sorry, I went into step 2 without realizing. But basically, we've got everything down. We know what to do. We know what person to be. And now we're initiating it. We're doing something that puts us in that mental state. We're thinking about the things we need to think. We're focusing on the things we need to focus on and think about in order to get that state. Our body is saying that emotion that we are. And we get closer to the car, we get even more confident. We put our helmet on confidently. We speak to everybody confidently. We're looking and we're keeping it very focused. And if you get somebody who is confident, not overconfident, but confident, determined to execute, and you just give them 1 or 2 things to concentrate whilst they're in that car, they always do it. Number 3 is execution. Once you're in that mental state, you're sat in the car. Now you've got to execute. Because all too often, You can get a driver. This is what I learned in the early days. You can get a driver and you'll put them in the right mental state 5 minutes before they get into the car. And then they'll go there. And as you know, as I said, you can change an emotion just like that. In a flick of a fingers, you can change your emotion. They can flip the other way. They can go from confident, but then they'll hear a joke, say if their mechanic makes a joke out of them or something, and it knocks their confidence a bit. Another driver looks at them in a certain way, knocks their confidence again. And before you know it, they've lost all that prep that we've done. So execution comes to you maintaining that mindset, maintaining it when you're putting the belts on, maintaining it when you're warming the tires up, maintaining it all the way up until to the end of the race. That's the next level. So this is all part of your pre-race, believe it or not, because you're going to be warming up and you're going to stay there. Because I tell you what, you've got so many triggers. Let's just say you've had 3 bad races in a row, right? Or 3 bad qualifyings or 3 bad starts. Your brain has triggered, when you're in that sort of state of, oh, it's done it again, your brain triggers the smells, the feelings that you've got at that particular time. So it is possible that when your belts come down, when your engineer says that same word they always say, when you have that familiar smell of the engine and everything burning and the exhaust fumes in front, it can trigger an emotion of when things are not going right. So say if you're in that situation where you made a bad start and it's the burning clutch smell, and it'll put you into fear mode. So you've got to make sure that you maintain that confidence and self-belief if that's what you want. You've got to maintain it by holding that thought process, by holding that body, that breathing style that keeps you confident. No matter what triggers are out there, you overcome it. Okay, so to recap, number 1, foundation. This is all about getting very clear on the 1 or 2 things you've got to do. Simplify it. What have you got to execute on? And secondly, what is the mental mode you need to be in order to execute on it? Who's the kind of person you need to be in order to do that? Number 2, initiation. This is where you initiate it. You create that person right before you get into the car, which again, start with the physical kind of warm-ups, and then from then on, create the mentality you need. This is right before you get into the car, right? You've already got your race suit on, not the helmet yet, but now you've got the right race suit on, you're listening to the music, you're creating that person, that mindset. You're focusing on what you need to focus on in order to get there. Your body is the way it is in order to get there. You are there. And remember, if you're in that right mental state and you're giving yourself a clear goal, you've got much more of a chance to do it and you'll feel a lot more relaxed about doing it. And number 3 is execution. Once you're there, then you put the helmet on, you get in the car, keep it there. This is where you've got to make sure the mind is staying on what's it got to do and who I've got to be there. Have the body, if it's got to be, you feel like you want to be up for a fight, have the body a little bit more tense and ready to go for it. You got it? And focus on what needs to be done. Talk to yourself in a very determined way. This is the way it's going to be done. That's the best mental prep. Obviously, there's a lot deeper than this. So say if you've got certain hang-ups, right? You've got certain hang-ups that things have happened to you in the past, you need to overcome them. This is the kind of, this pre-race mentality or mode, this pre-race performance routine, should I say, this pre-performance routine is here to sort of patch over things sometimes. It's not the real, it's not going to get to the deep core problems or issues or challenges you've got in your personal life. This is just to make sure you're switched on at that particular moment. And that's what it does. If you've got deeper stuff, then you need to cover that. You need to overcome that way before the race weekend, obviously. So this is for you to say, right, I'm at this certain step, this certain skill set. I want to access it right now before I go into this race and for this race. How do I do it? Get really clear on what you've got to do. Create that mental mode that you need to be in to do it and hold it. Keep it for the race. And I'll tell you what, just this, you'll get really creative. You'll have certain music you listen to and you say, oh, it didn't quite work. It didn't put me in the right mental state. Now I want to focus on this. I want to talk to this person before I go into the race car. Makes me feel better. I've got this mantra going through my head. I'm saying these things over and over again. It gives me confidence. There's all sorts of things you can do and it's very personal to you. But that's the structure I've just given you there. Don't overload this. Make it simple. Put it into the state of mind that you need to be in order to pull it off, and just do it.